The man in the hotel mirror I had been driving since sunrise. The kind of road trip where your brain goes numb and the lines on the highway start to blur together. The sun had long dipped behind the horizon. When I finally saw the glowing vacancy sign of a roadside hotel, nothing special. 2 stories of beige brick, a lobby lit by buzzing fluorescent lights, but at that point it looked like paradise. My body ached as I pulled into the nearly empty lot. A few cars were scattered here and there, mostly trucks without estate plates. I killed the engine, sat for a minute in the dark, and told myself, just get inside, shower, and sleep. The lobby smelled faintly of disinfectant, sharp and medicinal. The clerk at the desk barely looked up from his computer. His name tag read Darren, and he had the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too many midnight travelers stumble through. Checking in, he muttered. Yeah, just one night. He tapped at his keyboard, slid me a keycard, and said, Room 418, elevators to the left. The elevator creaked its way up, groaning with each floor. When I stepped into the hallway, I noticed the carpet was threadbare, patched in spots with mismatched fabric. The air felt heavy, like no one had cracked a window in years. Strangest of all, there was a faint smell bleach again, stronger here, as though someone had been scrubbing at something that refused to wash away. Room 4018 was nothing unusual. 2 queen beds, a small desk, a flat screen bolted to the wall, and a bathroom tucked to the side. I tossed my bag onto the nearest bed and went straight for the shower. The hot water was bliss. I stood under it until my skin turned pink, steam clouding the small bathroom. Finally, I stepped out, grabbed a towel, and wiped the condensation from the mirror. That's when I saw him, a man tall, thin, standing directly behind me in the reflection. He was dressed in dark clothes, his posture stiff, but his face wasn't right. His eyes were set just a little too far apart. His smile stretched too wide, his lips curling inhumanly. I spun around, heart pounding. The bathroom was empty, just the tiled walls, the dripping shower, the hum of the vent. My throat tightened. I turned back to the mirror. The man was gone. My reflection looked perfectly normal, exhausted, wet-haired, eyes wide with fear, but normal. I told myself I was overtired. Hallucinations happen after 12 hours on the road. That was all. Nothing more. But when I stepped back into the room, I felt that heavy awareness, like someone was watching me from just out of sight. I left the bathroom light on, crawled into bed, and flipped the TV to some late-night comedy reruns just for the noise. Sleep didn't come easy. Every creak of the building made me flinch. Once I thought I heard a soft knock from the bathroom door, though I tried to convince myself it was the pipes. Eventually, exhaustion dragged me under. And then I dreamed. In the dream, I stood once again in the bathroom, facing the mirror. Steam clung to the glass, fogging everything but the center. And in that clear oval of reflection, the man was waiting. He smiled wider this time, his teeth jagged and too many in number. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned forward until his forehead pressed against the inside of the mirror. His breath fogged the glass, forming little clouds that faded into shapes. But they weren't words. They were smears like the streaks someone makes when they're trying to wipe something away. I tried to back out of the dream, to wake myself up, but I couldn't move. My feet were glued to the tile. His black eyes locked onto mine. Then came the sound, the squeal of glass under pressure. Fine cracks began to spiderweb across the mirror from where his forehead pressed, radiating outward. I heard a faint whisper, his lips barely moving. Let me out. I woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat. My heart pounded against my ribs as I sat upright in bed. The TV was still playing faintly, but the bathroom light flickered. Something was wrong. I forced myself to look toward the bathroom door. It was open a crack, and through that gap, I could see the mirror. Even from bed, I could make out the streak across its surface. A long, deliberate smear, as though someone had wiped it clean from the inside. I didn't sleep again that night. When dawn broke, I packed my bag and practically ran to the front desk. Darren was still there, sipping from a styrofoam cup of coffee. He raised an eyebrow at my pale face. Checking out early? Yeah, I said quickly. Room 418, something's wrong with the mirror. For the first time, he really looked at me. His expression tightened, like he wanted to say something, but thought better of it. He handed me the receipt, then leaned forward slightly. "You sure it was 418? Yes. He hesitated, then shook his head. "That room doesn't have a mirror. It hasn't for years." My skin went cold. "What do you mean?" He lowered his voice. "Guest died in there. They found him, sitting on the bathroom floor, staring into the mirror." Except he stopped himself, as though realizing he'd said too much. "Maintenance removed it. Nothing's been on that wall since." I opened my mouth, closed it again, then turned and walked out. When I got to my car, I couldn't help it. I glanced back at the hotel's 4th floor. And there, in the window of room 418, a pale face pressed against the glass, watching. The passenger who wasn't there, I've worked the night shift as a rideshare driver for almost 4 years. Most nights are uneventful bar hoppers, airport runs, the occasional drunk who falls asleep in the back seat. But every once in a while, something happens that leaves a stain on your memory, something you'll never shake. This night began like any other. Midnight traffic had thinned, the neon glow of the city smeared across the wet streets from a passing rain. My phone buzzed with a ride request pickup near an old part of town, by the river. The streets there were quiet, lined with warehouses long since abandoned, their windows boarded up. A single street lamp flickered where the pin on the map directed me. As I pulled up, I saw him, a tall man in a black coat, standing perfectly still under the buzzing lamp.
Oh.
No luggage, no phone in his hand, just waiting. He moved slowly, deliberately, as he approached my car. When he opened the back door, I caught his reflection in the rearview mirror, pale skin, sunken cheeks, and eyes that seemed far too dark, as though they absorbed the dim light rather than reflected it. "Downtown," he said softly, his voice carrying a strange weight. Then he leaned back in his seat, hands folded neatly on his lap, tapped the app, shifted into gear, and drove. At first, silence filled the car. The rain on the windshield, the hum of the tires over wet pavement. I kept glancing at the mirror, half expecting him to start conversation, but he just sat there, staring straight ahead at the back of my head. "Long night?" finally asked, just to break the tension. He smiled faintly, yet something about the way he said it made my skin prickle. I focused on the road, watching the darkened storefronts roll by. As we reached a red light, I glanced into the mirror again. He was gone. My heart leaped. I twisted in my seat, empty. The back seat was completely empty. The light turned green. Cars honked behind me. Trembling, I pressed the gas and drove forward, my mind racing. Did he get out? Did I imagine him? And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. He was sitting there again, same position, same folded hands, like he'd never moved. I gripped the wheel tighter, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Are you all right back there?" I asked, my voice cracking. He didn't answer. He just smiled wider in the mirror, teeth too white against his hollow face. The app's navigation said 10 more minutes to the drop-off point. 10 minutes? I could handle 10 minutes. But as I drove, the car's atmosphere grew heavier, like the air itself was thickening. The faint smell of mildew filled my nostrils, damp and sour. I checked the vents, but the heater blew warm, dry air. The smell was coming from him. My phone buzzed with a notification. I glanced at it. Ryder has canceled the trip. Canceled. While he was still in my back seat. I slowed, pulling toward the curb. "Looks like the ride was canceled. I'll have to let you out here." His smile faded. His head tilted slightly, unnaturally far to one side, like a doll's. "No," he whispered. "Keep driving." A shiver ran through me. Against all logic, I pressed the gas again. The streets ahead were nearly empty. As I drove deeper into the city, the lights grew sparser, the buildings older, their windows dark. I didn't recognize this part of town, though I'd been driving here for years. Finally, he spoke again. "Do you want to know where I'm really going?" I swallowed hard. "Where?" He leaned forward slightly, his face close enough that I could see it clearly in the mirror. His eyes weren't just dark, they were voids, endless and swallowing. "Home," he said, and then he vanished. The seat was empty. I slammed the brakes, the car skidding on the wet pavement. My breathing came in ragged gasps as I twisted around. Nothing. Just the empty back seat, seatbelt dangling loosely. For several long moments I sat there, hands shaking on the wheel. Then, slowly, I turned back toward the road. That's when I saw it. In the reflection of the rearview mirror, though, the seat was empty. I saw him sitting there, smiling. I didn't drive another rideshare shift after that night. The child in the parking lot. I've always hated working the night shift at the grocery store. It wasn't the work itself. Stocking shelves, rotating dairy, sweeping floors. It was the stillness of the place after midnight. Something about the long aisles, the hum of the coolers, and the silence broken only by the occasional crack of settling pipes made the store feel wrong. This story takes place about 3 years ago, during one of those shifts that drags on forever. I'd clocked in at 10 p.m., and by 2 a.m., I was already fighting exhaustion. The store closed to customers at midnight, so from then until morning, it was just me, my manager, and 2 other guys. That night, the manager had left early, saying he had some emergency. The other 2 workers were in the back unloading pallets, which left me alone out on the floor. At around 2:15 a.m., I stepped outside to the parking lot to grab a cart someone had left out. The air was cold, my breath coming out in faint clouds, and the lot was completely empty except for my car and one other vehicle parked at the far end. And then I saw her, a little girl, standing about 20 feet away near the edge of the lot. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. She wore a simple white nightgown, her bare feet pale against the asphalt. Her hair hung in messy tangles around her shoulders. I froze. What was a child doing out here at this hour? "Hey, sweetie," I called softly, not wanting to scare her. "Are you lost?" She didn't answer, just stood there, staring at me. I glanced around the lot, expecting to see a frantic parent running after her, but the place was empty. The street beyond was dark, the lamps flickering. I took a cautious step forward. "Do you need help?" Finally, she spoke, but her voice was wrong. It was flat, monotone, like she was reading words off a page. "Can you see me?" she asked. A chill ran down my spine. "Yes," I said carefully. "I can see you. Are you okay?" She tilted her head slightly, her tangled hair falling across her face. "Hey!" Then she giggled a sound so hollow it didn't match the expressionless look on her face. Before I could respond, the automatic doors behind me whooshed open. I turned instinctively at the noise, and when I looked back, the little girl was gone. The lot was completely empty. I felt my heart hammering in my chest. I hurried back inside, abandoning the cart. The other 2 guys were still in the back, so I didn't even mention it. I told myself I must have been imagining things sleep deprivation, maybe, but deep down, I knew I hadn't. The rest of the night passed in tense silence. But the image of that little girl lingered in my mind. When my shift finally ended at 6 a.m., I stepped outside again. The early light of dawn cast long shadows across the lot, and that's when I saw it. Drawn in chalk on the asphalt near where the girl had stood was a crude outline of a hopscotch grid. The numbers scrawled clumsily inside, and in the center of the first square, in smeared chalk dust, were 2 small footprints. Bare feet? The man at the window I used to work as an overnight security guard at a small office complex on the edge of town. The buildings weren't anything special, just a cluster of Laura's offices, medical suites, and 1 law firm. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., and most nights were so uneventful that I spent hours just walking the same halls, drinking bad coffee, and fighting the urge to sleep. The complex was quiet, almost too quiet. After midnight, the hum of the vending machines and the buzz of fluorescent lights seemed deafening. The only windows faced the parking lot, and beyond that was nothing but a stretch of woods. This encounter happened one November night, cold enough that frost had formed on the windows. I was making my rounds when I got the uneasy feeling of being watched. It wasn't the kind of paranoia that creeps in when you're alone. It was sharper, heavier, like eyes boring into the back of my neck. I tried to shake it off and continued down the hall. When I passed by one of the larger windows facing the lot, I froze. There was a man standing outside. He was tall, gaunt, dressed in a gray suit that looked a size too small. His skin was pale, almost chalky, and his head was tilted upward, staring directly at me through the glass. I jolted back, my heart racing. It was nearly 2 a.m. Who the hell would be standing out there? I pressed closer to the window, ready to knock or shout, but as I leaned in, I realized something that made my stomach twist. His breath wasn't fogging up the glass. Mine was, in thick clouds from the cold, but his wasn't. I stepped back, pulling out my radio. Control, we've got someone loitering outside the West Hall window. Can you check the cameras? There was static. Then the dispatcher's calm voice, copy that. Checking now. A long pause. Then, negative. No one on the cameras. I froze. I could still see him standing right there, motionless, his head still tilted at that unnatural angle. But on the cameras, he didn't exist. The dispatcher told me to stay put and wait for backup, but something in me didn't want to. Against my better judgment, I moved toward the exit door, determined to confront him. When I pushed outside into the frigid night air, the lot was empty. I turned in every direction. Nothing. Just my car, a few scattered vehicles, and the dark wall of trees beyond. Shaken, I went back inside. But as soon as I stepped through the door, I felt it, again that weight of being watched. And when I looked up, he was there, standing on the inside now, just a few feet down the hall. I froze in place, my breath caught in my throat. His face was wrung too smooth, his eyes too dark, and when he smiled, it stretched too wide across his face. I stumbled backward, fumbling for my flashlight, but when I raised it, the beam passed right through him. He flickered, like static on a screen, and then vanished. For the rest of that shift, I refused to leave the security booth. Every creak of the building set my nerves on edge. When my relief finally arrived at dawn, I told him what had happened. He gave me a strange look and said quietly, "You've seen him too, huh?" It turns out the man at the window was something of a legend among night staff. Guards, janitors, even late-night workers had claimed to see him always standing. Always watching, sometimes outside, sometimes inside. No one knew who he was or why he appeared. But every single story ended the same way. Once you saw him, you never truly stopped. Even now, years later, whenever I walk past a darkened window at night, I catch myself glancing at the glass, half expecting to see that pale man in the too small suit grinning back at me.